Hi everyone and welcome back to my Consultant Explorer channel. I'm Charlie and I'm here to help you explore the early career years of management consulting, help you to be successful at it and show you how to make the most of the opportunities that it can open up for you. I spent 8.5 years at Accenture building the most incredible launchpad for my own career, and now that I'm starting and running my own businesses, I can choose what I work on whenever and wherever I want to in the world. And that is the kind of freedom I can help you find in your journey, which starts just as mine did in management consulting. So today we're going to talk about probation. It's potentially one of the most daunting aspects of any new job, especially a new job though that you're really excited about and that you've worked super hard to get. There's a perception on the outside of the consulting industry that there's an incredibly strict performance culture, and that if you're not a high performer, you will be swiftly managed out of the business. So, facing a probation period as a new consultant can be pretty scary. In this video, I'm going to talk a bit about what probation is and how it works. And then I'm going to give you a sense of how you'll be absolutely fine with passing your probation. I will share some tips with you about how to make sure that you complete your probation with a positive recommendation. And hopefully by the end of the video, I'll have addressed any concerns that you have right now about starting a new consulting job. Okay, let's start with what probation is and why companies have it. Primarily, probation is a safety net that helps companies filter new hires one final time before they offer them permanent employment. Sometimes candidates can look really great during hiring processes, only to then, once they start work, not perform as expected. So probation enables companies to let those candidates go before more permanent employment laws kick in and make it really hard to let them go later on the basis of substandard performance alone. But it's also a safety net for you as the candidate. You can often leave the company during probation much faster than you can during a permanent employment contract. Permanent employees can have a notice period that ranges anything from 1 month to 6 months, whereas candidates that leave during probation can often leave within 1 week to a month. So if you join the company and you realize pretty quickly that you really don't like it, you can leave without having to work through a really long notice period. So how long typically is a probation period? Well, it varies by things like career level and department and company and even country, and can be anything from 3 months to 3 years long. For most job roles though, it's usually between 3 and 6 months long. For graduates, it can be up to 12 months because the risk of a bad hiring decision is higher given that there is no career background to go by. For the most senior roles as well, it can be up to 3 years because that person needs time to prove that they can have the right impact on the business. Also, if your probation gets extended, then it can run for longer than was originally planned. We'll come on to this as a potential probation outcome in just a few minutes. It doesn't happen often. In fact, I didn't see this happen once in my time. But theoretically, a manager can actually end your probation period early with either a positive recommendation or a negative recommendation. But it's more likely that that manager will only do anything about your probation at the point that you ask them to complete your probation form, which you will be given likely towards the very end of your probation period by HR. You can also end your own probation period early if you decide that you don't like the job. Although bear in mind that this probably means that you'll have to hand back any joining bonus that you received when you joined. If, however, you need to end your probation early because of some sort of extenuating circumstance, then it's likely that your company will treat the case on a personalised basis, and you may or may not need to hand back that joining bonus. In this situation, it may also be that your company tries to find a way that works for both of you, that means that you can continue on in employment with them, if that's what you would like to do. Okay, so let's imagine that you've worked your 3-month probation period and it's now coming to an end. What do you do next? First off, it's likely that HR will contact you directly and they'll send you that form. That form needs to be signed by someone who is going to be able to recommend what HR do with you, whether they employ you or not moving forwards, on the basis of how they've seen you perform during your probation period. The form will ask for some details on what you've done and how well you've done it during your probation period. And it will ask for a recommendation along with justifications for that recommendation. There are usually a few different options for recommendations, and only one can be selected. Firstly, it could be a recommendation that you continue on as an employee because you've done a great job. Secondly, it could be a recommendation that you continue on as an employee, but that you move to a different part of the business because you'd be better suited there. Thirdly, it could be a recommendation to extend your probation period, to allow the company more time to make an assessment about what your final recommendation should be. Typically, extensions last for 3 months, and it's possible to have more than one, but not infinite extensions. And lastly, it could be a recommendation that you do not continue on in employment with this company. But remember that whatever the recommendation is, it needs to be accompanied by adequate reasoning and examples. So what kinds of reasons do people typically fail probation and be recommended not to continue on in employment with the company? First off, you could really have been working for any manager within your probation, and it's going to be that person who signs your form. So you're going to be afforded the same level of flexibility or benefit of the doubt that you have been afforded during your day-to-day working with that person. And this will vary somewhat between managers. But think about it this way. Companies spend thousands of pounds on every single candidate that they hire. And so they really don't want people to not pass their probation because it's costly. They'd much rather get the hiring process right to begin with. So if a manager wants to make sure that you don't pass your probation, they have to have a very good reason. In my time in consulting, I didn't see many graduates struggle to pass probation. It was more the experienced hires who struggled because they didn't adjust to the consulting ways of working. It was because of their prior experience and the habits that they'd learned whilst working elsewhere that they didn't do so well in the consulting environment. So the more junior you are and the more willing you are to be flexible in learning how to do things the consulting way, the less trouble you will ever have in trying to pass probation. I did see one graduate fail their probation because they were lying on the floor in the middle of our client office trying to catch Pokemon on the ceiling playing Pokemon Go. As reasons go for failing, I think that's a pretty decent reason, but it also shows you just how bad you have to be if you want to fail your probation as a graduate. It's actually much more likely that as a junior consultant, you decide to leave the company during your probation than that they decide to let you go. There's quite a high level of employee churn generally at junior levels, and so if you stay on with the company for a few years, you will see lots of people who joined with you and after you leave the firm. Usually these people leave because they underestimated the workload or they just really didn't know enough about the job before they joined. But hopefully my Consultant Explorer channel will help you avoid that. So how can you be 100% sure that you're going to get a positive recommendation on your probation form? It's actually more likely than not that you will get a positive recommendation because the person who's signing your form is much more likely to choose to coach you and to help you improve than to take an immediate stance that you're not ever going to be able to perform well enough, because that's what they're taught to do. Firing people is not a normal activity for consultants, and to be honest, it's not a natural thing for anyone to do to a colleague. That said, consultants do have to roll off colleagues from their projects relatively regularly when they're not performing very well. I'd say it happens about once every 6 months or so. So they're definitely not afraid to speak up if somebody isn't right for the job. So, number one tip is, make sure you do actually have someone to sign that form for you by working for someone on a project. If all you've done during your probation period is sit on the bench and not join any projects, then you're not going to have anyone who can vouch that you're actually able to do good work. Number two tip, make sure you've done a good job while working for that person, or those people if you've had multiple roles. So long as you've done a good job, there is zero reason to worry about not passing your probation. And tip number three, if you've not been able to get onto a project during your probation, then so long as it's through no fault of your own, and your company just didn't have any roles available for you, then you can just ask for a probation extension. On the other hand, if roles were available for you and you just refused to take them, then you might very well not be granted that extension. I have another video on how to find and choose the right roles for you if you'd like to dig a little bit more into that. So let's imagine that you do pass your probation successfully. What happens then? In truth, nothing changes. You will always be under constant evaluation because performance management processes are continuous. Consultancies are generally shifting more towards real-time, in-the-moment feedback as much as possible, which is a really good thing. And they're shifting away from the traditional annual performance review that many companies historically have always run. So you will always have a sense that your work is being evaluated and therefore appreciated, or else being given the opportunity to be improved. I have other videos on performance management if you'd like to know more about all of those processes. But working in this sort of environment will ensure that you are always kept on your toes in a good way and that you perform and progress to the best of your ability. It's much better for your career to have a structured set of expectations and a progression plan than it is to have nothing defined to work towards. So best of luck with passing your probation and for the performance journey that you should be excited to embark on. I hope this video has helped you understand how probation really works on the inside and has helped you to see that you'll be absolutely fine in passing it. If you found this video helpful, then let me know by clicking the like button. And if you'd like to see what I post next, then definitely subscribe to my channel. Social media links are below if you'd like updates via those. And if you have any questions or comments, then feel free to use the comments box below and I will do my best to answer absolutely everything. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day and I wish you all the best with your exploring.